let's start. Okay, I'll just make a very brief introduction. Apparently, we are going to do that all in English, all right? But I think that should be okay for all of us. Before we start, I chatted with Hong-Kai that we speak now at a very difficult situation, not only for Taiwan, all right? Taiwan has been 1 year late to catch up with this global trend. Actually, it's inevitable. Sooner or later, it will come. Okay, it's impossible to really block the virus, which knows no border, right? Which can penetrate from all corners. So there's no use for us to blame anyone. But the only way for us to do is to just keep safe and keep calm and try to help ourselves to go through it and try not to make it worse, right? But the difficult time that I mentioned, for one thing, of course, the global situation is still very bad. Thinking of this India, right? That really pains us, right? Concerning India or concerning Indonesia or concerning other places which have been seriously hit by the virus, is the infrastructure not good enough? Is the government's reaction not good enough? Is this and that? Okay, so when we as intellectuals, when we think the problem, how does the community becomes a problem? Do we blame the government? Do we think there are some gaps or loopholes or some weakness in the civic infrastructure or in this citizens' attitude toward one another? But now, what really also concerns us is the serious conditions in Palestine. I just mentioned that while friends, our classmates, with many of you know that Hazzeh just returned. I think the day before the New Year or to celebrate, but she has to return because of the problem. If she doesn't return, then she cannot be issued the continuation of her visa. But then right on that day or a few days before or later, then the strike, the date, right? The death toll now is over 200 and UN has no measure to stop it, okay? So that also let us worry that I raise the question, not only because I'm really thinking of Hazzeh these days, but also because Hong-Kai will be introducing her project that she did in Palestine a few years ago, or recently, actually. So how do we think our intervention? How do we think our action? If we are intellectuals, we are activists, we are NGO, for example, the ones that we invited last week, NGOs who were locally participating in their issues, solving their issues, clean water or other things, education and so on. Or like Hazzeh working on this participatory activity, bringing up some festivals or food events or sharing experiences. Can this event stop or solve or reduce the confrontation, the antagonism, and also the tension within the community, the same society? So this is actually Hong-Kai's issue. She has been asking the question, how does one root in places one doesn't visibly belong or doesn't legally belong, but or even if they are legally assigned the citizenship, maybe they still will suffer this exclusion or this all kinds of deprivation of their human rights and so on. So in the past, Hong-Kai had been working on diaspora's experience, okay, in Taiwan, but also she also has been working on migrant workers' experience in Taiwan. And she also worked on issues of the Jeju Island in South Korea. We know Jeju Island, similar to many places, right? There's an isolated island, which been this prison place for the dissidents, or which has been suffering this massacre during this through the government's military measure, and similar cases happen elsewhere. But she also had been working on Jordan, Palestine. Okay. So that means as an interdisciplinary artist, as an artist based in Taiwan, but also travel very largely, broadly in Central East or Middle East. So when she said she wants to think how we as researchers or we as artists, practicing artists, confront the politics of knowledge lost in colonial or diasporic encounters at the intersection of lived experience, power, and listening. Or when she said, through experimental modes of sonic sociality. Sonic is interesting when we say it is not only visual experience, but and also not only our intellect, but other modes, sensory modes, okay, smell, taste, tactile, and sonic, and so on. How do we see or conceive different time spaces that could interweave or can intertwine with different productions of experience or desire or histories of labor or economies of cohabitation and formation of knowledge? I'm actually reading whatever introduction that we can get from her Facebook, from her background information. So we are, at least I am, very happy to have her with us, okay? When we think how does the community becomes a problem, that is a question for everyone in different society, different cultural, historical moments, okay? But now today she will be sharing with us her thoughts, okay, making a haptic geography and intertemporality. Intertemporality is intertwining or interrelated temporal moments that also indicate different subject position, different subject experience, temporality. Every individual, every subject has a different temporality, but that temporality might not be easily shared by other people. Right? So when she's envisioned this geography, haptic geography, and intertemporality, what does she want to bring us? What does she want to introduce? So I'll give her the floor, and yeah, the floor is yours. You can start your talk. Yeah, welcome. Thank you. Now unmute yourself.
Hello, everybody. It's just such a pleasure for me to be here, and thank you very much for Joyce's invitation. So I have prepared to talk about 3 projects, but I think before, I mean, if there's enough time, but before I begin my presentation, I would like to read out loud a letter that one of my co-workers, one of my collaborators sent to this art school where I met her as a student and me as a teacher. And she is currently based in Ramallah, Palestine, and she sent this email to the entire school just 2 days ago. It's a little bit long, so bear with me. And the school I'm currently teaching is called Bard College in upstate New York. All at Bard community, I am a great believer of art. But what is art really, if not combined with follow, shape by, or made of action? I write to you today because I know most of you. I know you as a liberal community. I write to you today as believers of art, as supporters to actions, as defenders of the oppressed, as advocates against the oppressor of racism, LGBT, women, abusive regimes, and other justices, whom I won't expect to choose to ignore the Palestinian oppression. I write to you in a moment of vulnerability and strength at the same time. I write to you as my classmates, friends, loved ones whom I truly miss. I write to you as my dear teachers, educators, and respected ones. These are the hardest and yet the most crucial moments we Palestinians face since the beginning of the occupation in 1948. I write to you after midnight, 3 a.m. Jerusalem time. I am cut off from my apartment and work in Ramallah. All roads are closed in the West Bank and are under the threat of Israeli settlers and the soldiers' violence and attacks. 15-year-old kid was shot by an Israeli settler just now and found dead, 7 minutes away from home. There's nowhere that is simply safe, and that is not uncommon. I write to you during a massive airstrike attack on Gaza Strip, F-16 warplanes, the most brutal of all. I write to you minutes after I received a horrifying video message from a journalist friend who was covering the news from the hospital and got shocked for finding the 2 dead bodies of his brothers, among the victims being admitted to the hospital minutes after their homes was bombed by an airstrike. For those who don't know, one rocket of F-16 warplanes can demolish an entire building bigger than a science building, for instance. So yes, it can kill a whole family in a blink of an eye. Why am I writing to you today? Because solidarity campaigns are bigger than ever, yet not enough. I am not in a position to educate, but let's face it and put things right this time. The Palestine issue is about basic human rights. It's not complicated. It is a story of the oppressed and the oppressor, a military and unarmed civilians. It is a story of exposing a colonizer and standing up with the colonized. Tomorrow marks the day of Nakba, where we have been living under occupation for 73 years. The establishment of Israel as a state as a whole was built on the basis of ethnically cleansing the Palestinians by kicking them out of their homes and lands, and it continued since then. occupation of a highly armed and advanced army who is mostly supported by the US government and is being funded by American taxpayers' money. And I'm sorry to confront you with that means you in capital letter. In this moment, we are marching all over the world, raising a model of freedom for Palestine, while the Israeli settlers are chanting death to the Arabs, smashing and breaking houses. 2 hours ago, 2 children were burned out in Jaffa inside their own house. Worshippers were attacked inside Al-Aqsa Mosque in a holy month of Ramadan, and the most spiritual, important holy sites for all nations, including Muslims, Christian, Jewish, and many other religions, and historically, even atheists. The death toll of Palestinians 10 times higher than the Israeli, and it has been always like that. I write to you today to ask you to take action, to be responsible for educating yourself, get resources, ask questions, follow Instagram accounts, listen to people, read articles and books. Your voice has a value. Your art has a value. Your tweet has a value. Palestine isn't a private issue. It is a global story of oppression with all nations involved. We want solidarity and not charity. We can all put pressure on governments. We all have the power to end the fucking colonialism if power is put together. These are not the old ages. We must not allow colonialism to have upper hand. There are lots of protests taking place in New York, California, Chicago, and many others. There are lots of BARD people who are joining those protests. Please take action and stand by the cause right now. You will not be attacked. You will not be unsafe for only speaking up. So please use that privilege and do speak up. Write to me, ask me, argue with me, or even disagree with me. I'm always here for justice, humanity, and freedom. Palestine is an idea that gathers all. So that is an email from May Marie, who is a Palestinian Arab person, currently based in Ramallah, Palestine. And so I'm about to speak of a project in which I collaborated with her and 2 other Palestinian performers, and 1 Syrian and 1 Palestinian Jordanian diasporic person living in Jordan. And so when I'm speaking, I would encourage you to ask questions and to interrupt me. So I think that would make our conversation more dynamic. Okay, so I'm gonna share. Oh, 1 second. So this project is entitled Hazzeh. By speaking with you, I wanted to speak with you about how this project come into being. And I will try to articulate how I work at the places where I am a stranger, an outsider, or an ally, and sometimes all of them at the same time. For me, it's important to develop different modes of working in different circumstances. Jordan has been a very special place to me because I have kept going back since 2016. In 2016, spring session, an experiential learning and art residency program in Amman, Jordan, invited me to be a workshop facilitator and again in 2018 in Wadi Rum and Sinai, Egypt. So over time, I got to know many cultural practitioners in the local community, and we have since become close interlocutors, collaborators, and friends, despite the fact that I don't speak Arabic, and neither am I religious in any sense. So at the beginning of 2019, when I received the invitation from the hosting institution, MMAG Foundation, I was really elated to hear that I was referred by the foundation as part of the family. So this group show is titled "Stars Are Closer and the Clouds Are Nutritious Under Golden Trees." It takes the French novelist Jean Genet's final book, Prisoner of Love, published in 1986, as its point of departure. And Genet's love for landless revolution inspired him to narrate another kind of story about his time with the Palestinian Fedayeen. Fedayeen means a freedom fighter during the 1960s. And this book, Prisoner of Love, it provides a very rare firsthand witness testimony about a revolution that has deeply scarred the region, though through a stranger's point of view. This revolution has long been a taboo history that many in the region don't want to remember at all. And Prisoner of Love, like this book, is also a deeply, deeply personal voyage to the bloody intersection of oppression, terror, revolt, passion, death, and then regeneration at the heart of our contemporary world. This is a world we inhabit, and it constitutes of a multiplicity of past, present, and futures. Hazzeh in Arabic means shaking or quivering. It also stands for a very particular earthquake that severely struck Palestine and its neighboring areas in 1927. And many Palestinian friends told me that their grandparents would use this word, Hazzeh, as a temporal marker to refer to the time, rather than using a Western calendar. For instance, they would say something like, this event or that event happened before or after the Hazzeh. And this particular relationship to time and earth resonate with me very strongly, as personally I was born and grew up on an island above 44 detectable fault lines. Like in Taiwan, earthquakes are very, very common places. So that means when the earth shakes, whether in small or in big magnitude, the earthquake affects the core of our body and our psyche, both pedestrianly or very intensely. In other words, we will quiver or we will shake from both inside and outside. So when reading Prisoner of Love and some of the related references, I came across the Palestinian American scholar Edward Said's words on Jean Genet. Can you see it? Okay. His movement through Jordan and Lebanon had something like the effects of a seismographic reading, drawing, and exposing the fault lines that a large normal surface had hidden. So very much struck by this sentence by Edward Said, it got me to think and wonder. So how does one move and detect like a seismograph that exposes not only the fault lines of the earth, but also the entanglement between human ideology and the subjugated memories in the region? In this sense, Hazzeh could refer not only to the region's political tumult and the violent dispositions, but also to its subterranean seismic and tectonic activities. The region, i.e. Middle East, usually includes the Arab countries from Egypt east to Persian Gulf, and Iran, including Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon. So this is the very, very specific paragraph in the Prism of Love that inspired the conception of the project Hazzeh. It's on page 43 to 44. Jean Genet wrote, one night before dawn in January 1971, 4 months after Black September, 3 separate groups of Fedayeen who had been on the march for some time, transferring from one base to another, were singing to each other from various hills. Between each song, I could hear the silence of the morning, dense with all the daytime sounds that hadn't yet burst forth. So inspired by Genet's very vivid account of how Fedayeen communicated with each other by singing on the hills, this project attempt to position a way or like a prison of listening and the feeling and the sensing onto the geopolitical and the geological time space of Jean Genet's trajectory of the Fedayeen. As a friend outside and inside of history, I want to hear the silence of the morning dance with all the daytime sounds that hadn't yet burst forth, that Genet heard, as well as the songs that the Fedayeen might have sung and listened with each other. And I also want to hear the silences of the memories that are yet to animate the sounds to burst forth. So this has been so this project was not easy at all when I was developing it, like due to many reasons, the language barrier and the fact that I haven't really spent that much time in that region. And also I feel that like a lot of the subjugated memories, they are all lived. I mean, they are all lived memory, but they are subjugated and erased and disavowed. So I think what I confront the most challenging question as an art practitioner, like working in that region, is how can I work? How can I find a mode or a way of working that can try to access to this knowledge and these memories, which I think has always been the very fundamental question that I have to constantly, repeatedly ask myself. So, and I think, particularly given that I have many friends and a collaborator in that region, so I was very, very fortunate to be permitted that access, to ask questions, and then as well as to have responses and answers. So having discussed with many friends from Jordan and Palestine, we decided this project will come to take a kind of form of open rehearsal but in the form of nuar. Nuar is an Arabic term. It stands for a very specific Palestinian act of mourning, grieving for the dead, usually performed by women, wailing and singing. It has become a taboo form of mourning since the very first Intifada in the 80s, the Palestinian uprising. So Intifada means Palestinian uprising against the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. So together with my collaborator, the performer May Marie, Gaza All Day, Hannah, Hash Hassan, Ibn Ahmed, and Rahig Havezh, respectively from Jordan, Syria, and Palestine. We decide to navigate between various pertinent sites to junction-aid and the Fedayeen's movement with subterranean fault lines underneath between Jordan and Palestine. So it means that we are moving from Ashkelon in North Jordan, Dead Sea in South Jordan, to Jericho in Palestine. And so in this project, we rehearse Nuar as we trace the fault line. And why is it important to emphasize that is an open rehearsal? Because my collaborator May Marie, the writer who wrote that long email, she tried to learn how to do Nuar from her old neighbors in Ramallah. And for many, many reasons, all these elderly women, they all refuse to teach her. And I think it has a lot to do with this very violent history in that region that the community would rather choose to forget. So even then, as Palestinian, they still couldn't have access to that very specific knowledge that is on the verge of disappearing. And so May and other Palestinian friends, they try really, really hard to find a little bit like some clue as to how to do it. And so this in this form of open rehearsal, nobody really know what is the most appropriate way of doing it. So when we were walking between one side to another, we are also like constantly trying to learn and study and to do it together as a very temporary collective. So now I'm gonna go over the images of our movement documented from our movement together over 4 days of journey. So this is on the hilltop of Ashkelon, Jordan, where Jean-Genet spent a lot of time with the Fedayeen. And the lady on the left, she is a May Marie. So they are rehearsing how to do the Nuar. This is in the valley in Ashkelon, Jordan. And again in the valley Ashkelon in Jordan. And then the next day we moved to Dead Sea in Jordan Valley in the southern Jordan. And you can see across the water that is Palestine. And so among the three performers, May is the only Palestinian, while the other two performers, one is Syrian refugee living in Jordan, and the other one is a Palestinian refugee living in Jordan. And what really, really struck me, or also you could say shocked me, maybe not so shocking, but it's extremely, extremely heartbreaking when May told me, when I saw May was having she was really like frolicking on the beach, playing with the water, playing with the mall on the beach. And so I was watching him and then say to him, I said, man, you are really having a really good time. And then she just said to me, like very, very flat out, she said, because in Palestine, we don't have the access to the free beach. So meaning that in occupied Palestine, all this very, very common access to natural resources that we all take it for granted is a privilege for the Palestinian living in occupied Palestine. And then the next day we moved to Jericho, Palestine. That was just on the border between Israel and Jordan. It was above another fault line. And there's a Christian monastery on the top of the hill. As you can see, the cross. And this is one of the excerpts from the Palestinian Morning, the book Palestinian Morning, that my collaborator spoke and sung. I'm gonna play 2 audio clips. This is from this is audio recording of our rehearsal in Palestine, in Jericho, Palestine. Yes. Okay.
لا من هالبارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبته بتطول لا من هالبارود بالوتر قالت لا يا صاحبي لا غبت طالت لا من هالبارود في الوتد بتصيح لا يا صاحبي مالك جاري لا من هالبارود بالوتد بتغزل لا يا صاحبي مالك عالقبر نازل لا من هالبارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبتو بطول لا من هالبارود بالوتد قالت لا يا صاحبي لا غبتو طالت لا من هالبارود في الوتد بتصيح لا يا صاحبي مالك جاريح لا منها البارود بالوتد بيتغسل لا يا صاحبي مالك عالقبر ناسل لا منها البارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبت بطول لا منها البارود بالوتد قالت لا يا صاحبي لا غبت طالت لا منها البارود في الوتد بتصيح لا يا صاحبي مالك جريح لا منها البارود بالوتد بتغزل لا يا صاحبي مالك عالقبر نازل لا منها البارود بالوتر بتقول لا يا صاحبي ويا غبت بطول لا منها البارود بالوتد بتقول لا يا صاحبي لا غبت طالت.
The audio was sung by three Palestinian women performers, including my friend May Marie. And this is another audio clip. I believe it was recorded on the sea.
هي دارهم بل الندى بابك حزين موجعة على أصحابك هي دارهم بل الندى حزين موجعة على اللي غابك هي دارهم بل الندى الخوخاتك حزين موجعة على اللي ماتت يا دارهم بل الندى لذيان لك حزين موجعة على الخيال حزين موجعة على أصحابي
Listening to their voices echoing in the valley and between the hills, I think we try to vary in the different modes of critical feeling, summoning, and grappling with a heterogeneity, rhythms, and memories inside our bodies. By the mountains, land, water, birds, trees, and those who keep us up in non-human form. I think this ultimately, I think we wanted to ask, I think the question making this project together is how can we imagine a sort of speculative hybrid system forged by bodies, voices, by ears. And through doing that, we also ask what kind of haptic geography or affinity may come.
Okay. Do you want to explain a bit more about this nuak? It seems that we know that it's a morning song. When do they sing the song? Okay. The morning, I don't hear your sound. Let me see. Yeah, right. This young artist, let me see.
Can you hear me now?
All right, can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Good. Yeah, okay. But your internet seems to be unstable. I mean, faltering once in a while. But let me repeat. Maybe because it seems that your friend May, a young woman's artist, wanted to retrieve this experience of this singing this nuak. But the elder people, you said they tend not to teach them, maybe because experience is too painful. But at what moment do they sing the song? And it seems that your rehearsal at different locations, this previous experience of the moment of mourning seems to be recalled and reproduced. But maybe you want to say a little bit more why the elder people, they don't tend to teach them, and they sing the song before in the past. I mean, yeah.
First of all, they really nuak is not.
Your sound is off and on.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Nothing I can do about my connection. When we were working on this project, there May always stressed. No.
I mean, I think we lost your sound for a moment.
Can you hear me?
Just do it again. Yeah, do it again.
听得到吗？
可以。
There is nobody.
Of your
Okay. So about
we didn't hear you.
I think I will have to leave and then come back.
Okay, All right, restart the game. We'll wait for you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, a lot better.
Okay. I think there must be a glitch between me, like, between switching the sharing mode.
Maybe, yes, maybe.
Okay. So about Nuak, I very, very honestly, I don't know Nuak very much. And then even when I was developing this project, that we try to look up any information about Nuak, even in Arabic, online, and there's really like almost zero, almost like non-existence. So I think for me, my very, very limited knowledge of Nuak comes from May and other Palestinian friends. I can only speak of what I can only recall what they told me, since I'm not an expert on Nuak at all. And so according to May, Nuak is a form of mourning and grieving over any type of loss, particularly the loss of lives. So usually Nuak is performed by the elderly men in Palestine. And why Nuak has since become such like heavy taboo in Palestine, I think, as I was saying earlier in the presentation, that because it is so, because the people in the region heavily associated with this very bloody, violent history of the Palestinian uprising, and that many lives of Palestinians were lost. And I think to the point that it was simply too painful to remember. So I think it's under this collective consciousness that the people in those in Palestine, they would rather not to remember. And so I think I understood that it's also part of the reason why the elderly, they don't want to pass on this memory of pains and the suffering and the loss of their loved one. Because by passing on the form of remembering, and the memory of and loss would be passed on as well. But I think there's definitely, from my time spending there, I think there's definitely there seems to be a difference between in a relationship with Nuak between Palestinian in Palestine and a diasporic Palestinian in Jordan. Like for instance, like I have made friends with some diasporic Palestinians, elderly women in Jordan, and they all know. Not they all of them know. They know of Nuak, and they can do it. So I think there seems to be a very difference between those who don't want to remember, and those who live in Palestine, and those who are exiled Palestinian living elsewhere. So I think the relationship to the idea, to the practice of mourning seem to be very, very different. And also to my surprise, I received many requests from diasporic Palestinian in Jordan, like both artists and a researcher. They are requested to have access to my recording and to have me, like to ask me to pass on any material I might have on Nuwak. And all these requests come from the Palestinians in Jordan. And and also very interestingly, like I think last year, a Palestinian Jordanian researcher got in touch with me, and so he wanted to know more about how and why I developed this project, Hazzeh. And he opened our meeting by asking, why did you bring such sadness to us in Jordan? Because by having the access to this very phone morning, they seem to recall and retrieve that profound sadness of losing their own lands and also losing relationship to that particular land, and also to their own narrative of what is Palestine.
So, what's your own experience through this process of reproducing or re-experiencing the moments of sadness together with these three artists or singers? I see there. If our guests have questions, you can raise your hand. I saw one question, low more, but let me finish my question. That is, what's your own experience walking through with them through the landscape at different villages or corners, and rehearsing this songs, and also actually through the songs, it's the moments of sadness in the past, in the historical moment, right? What's your own experience, but also what are the experience of your audience, and that is not your actors, but also the audience. As you said, in Palestine, tend not to really get involved in reliving this sad moment, but the diasporic Palestinians, they would like to know more. There are other different reactions of those, the experience of listening to this music. But before you answer the question, let's see whether we have other questions. Lo, Mo, do you want to speak up? Yeah, unmute yourself. No, we don't hear you.
Now?
Okay, good.
Yeah. I think my question is a multi-part question, and it in parts coincides with Professor Liu's question. So, listening to your presentation of the artwork Hazzeh, I have this question also in mind. But besides, of course, the performers, where it was carried, understanding is you started around the region of Al Junu, close to Oman, and you went towards the south to the Dead Sea, right? And not yet to the Red Sea, because I think it's also this very particular geographical location where you have Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Palestine kind of looking at each other literally. Also wondering, so yes, so first part, the audience, as they perform, who do you think is the intended audience, maybe at home and abroad and already in the diasporic sense? And according to knowledge, your work has not presented in Palestine. Do you think there is ever that possibility? And could that been And also following up on the question of the type of mourning performance. It seems like it's mourning already is a kind of ritual that can be, but it's a kind of from what you were saying, it's a kind of ritual that's not spoken about. And do you think that's because due to your non-Palestinian identity, or it is something that even in the community itself that's been muted? Because there's back to a piece I was working on with friends only just yesterday in support of Palestine, about another book by David MacDonald on Palestinian music and music in the construction of identity and resistance. So how do you think that kind of thing fits in a broader landscape of how sounds work in that very historic process of both Intifada, the Nakba, and so on, and a very timely, I think, very timely spot to be talking about that as well.
Big question though.
Yeah. Very good. Care to respond, or you want to hear more questions?
Maybe I should respond before I forget.
Yeah,
Those
sure.
questions.
Please go ahead.
And you will have to remind me of the questions. Okay, I think because the commissioning institution is in Amman, Jordan, so the audience would be the local audience. Okay. Since the travel between Palestine and Jordan are extremely difficult, and as far as I know, most of my Palestinian friends, they really don't want to spend too much time in Jordan, I mean, for many complicated and reason. So I think yes. So this commission or this larger group exhibition conceive for the audience of diasporic Palestinians in Jordan.
Particularly?
Huh?
Particularly, what about Palestinians abroad, elsewhere?
I think for particular location in Amman, yes, it's definitely for the local audience, and local not only means Jordanian, but those who are freely to move. And I think freely to move is definitely a privilege. Yeah. And one would probably this is also what I have learned when I was there. Palestinian, if they have a Jordanian passport, then yes, it would be easier for them to come to Jordan. But for the diaspora Palestinian living in Jordan, it's extremely, extremely difficult for them to travel to Palestine. Yes, and for me, because Palestine is occupied by Israel, and for me, a Taiwanese passport holder, Taiwan has kind of like a friendly relation to the Israel as a nation state. Even I is crossing a distance that could easily be done in half hour, like in a car. Hours to cross the border from Jordan to Israel.
Yeah, and you can't walk across the border from Jordan.
No, of course not. Of course not. I cannot.
No, I have to taxi can take you to the customs.
No. It's very, very complicated. Yeah. It's very complicated. It took me 4 hours to cross the border, and I am not even allowed to cross with my Palestinian collaborators. So they are designated to a very specific queue in the border. So yes, so I have discussed a great deal my Palestinian friends in Palestine and with my diasporic Palestinian friends in Jordan. And from the strands of conversation that helped me to conceive of this project. So yes, I was conceiving this project with the intention of sharing this with both the audience in Palestine and Jordan. And so far, there hasn't been an opportunity to show this piece in Palestine, but I'm not in a hurry. And plus that now the time is really, really challenging right now. So what is, you were asking, what is my experience of being involved?
And also
the
the artist, when they went through the rehearsal sequences, did they change or did they acquire some different experience?
I think
through the process.
I think for that it would be difficult for me to respond.
Okay.
Because I think this as I said earlier, this experience, this historical trauma, and this that is ongoing. I think for me, because I haven't lived it, and I think I try really hard to be very, very respectful in my process of working with them.
Yeah.
I think I try to be very conscientious what kind of memory and access and the knowledge I can have access to, and those I shouldn't have access to. So I think in the process of collaborating, I want to be more of a than a researcher. Yeah, because I think for me to work with those who are dispossessed of their narrative, the history of the, I think the last thing that we need is for me memory to be appropriated by an outsider.
Sure.
And I think this very extractive position, and I would think is unethical position, is something that I always try to be very, very aware of. So I think that if they want to talk about, they want to share whatever they wish to share, that I'm all ears. But I think I would want to, like to push, can you tell me how you feel? And then can you tell me how this project might have changed you? But all I could say was after we wrap up this project, and we are all completely exhausted, like really, it was a really exhausting process, by having to travel those long miles from North Jordan to South Jordan, to crossing the border to this Palestine. And I think I received messages from all of the collaborators, and they all told me it was a very valuable experience. I think that's what they care to share. But okay. I couldn't really say how much. I don't know how much it might have changed them. But I do know that after this exhibition opened in Jordan, and I was already in Taiwan, I heard back telling me like lots of audience to the exhibition, and they begin to share into tears when they heard the piece.
Yeah.
So
I don't know whether other participants have questions, but to me, I think it seems that there are several levels going on. In the very beginning, perhaps it was something like, something when we collect music or song or ballad, it's like a preservation of a heritage, on that surface. Yeah, we pick up this piece and we collect them, and then that's done. For your case, that Nuwa is such deeply associated with historical memories. Historical memories also, okay, about the painful experience. And that painful experience will not point to only one, but repeated moments of loss, of death, of missing someone. Okay, so maybe even it will be different from generation to generation. They still keep that song as their practice. So I think this is a very rare but very valuable experience that might need to go on. And if you still have chance to visit them or listen or discuss with them how they re-experience this music, the musical experience, and also the very multi-layer association of all this historical past, maybe even relating to today's situation, okay, that days pass on, then they will still think of this, using this music expressing experience of loss, then that might all be different. But also, I think last time when we discussed Mahmoud, Hadi and her friend, they do not really catch it. For those people who live in Jerusalem, they might not, or they were not taught, or they might not be able to practice it, right? So they have the modernized version of Nuwa, like pop song and so on. So, but that turned into cheerful tone. So that's very strange and different. Yeah. But do we have other questions before Hong-Kai move on? I believe she has other things to share, right? Do we have questions? I think for discussing this incident or this case.
Something worth mentioning is you probably are curious why I knew about Nuwa as at the beginning, how I heard about this. It was from a Palestinian friend who is also a very good friend with Marie. And so at the beginning of my research, I got in touch with him and immediately pointed me to Nuwa. And he is from Nablus. He's from Nablus, Palestine. And his aunt was a Fedayeen. Okay. In the 80s, and ended up prisoner for 10 years. Okay. So it was him who introduced me to Nuwa, although he didn't really know much about it. And he pointed me to Marie and told me that you should talk to May because she's trying to study Nuwa. So the fact that I was able to reach out to be connected to this Palestinian friend Kai and May is because both Kai's and May were doing the MFA art college. Okay. So that's how we got connected in the first place, in the very first place. Okay. Yeah. So it was the existing connection, or you could say affinity, that helped me to be able to conceive of this project. So I would say that I think in my in the way, I think very, very, very rare that a project could just exist
Yeah.
by itself. Like
Yeah.
I think most of my project, they are kind of sequential in the sense, or
Yes, yeah.
sequential
Sure.
or consequential in the sense of
Yes.
how this affiliation or this intimacy with my interlocutor collaborator could have been accumulated and have been developed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is May the one who wrote you the letter that you?
Yeah. No, it's not a letter for me. It's a letter for the entire art school.
I know, but she's the one who wrote the letter.
Yeah. Yes.
The open letter for everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
Now everything is, as I believe that means a lot to May too. Right.
Yeah.
So something would change, not only for you, but for her and for other people.
Yeah.
Perhaps we could take a 5 or 10 minutes break and we continue. Hong-Kai, what do you think?
Yeah, but any other question?
Yeah. Raise your question either with your ear or your hand on the screen. I guess respond, 回应. Okay, there are different modes for you can blow up this like a palm or a heart, or you can raise your hand. Or at the very end, we can also have a discussion for everything that's being raised today. Okay. Do you have questions now?
Or you could ask a question in Mandarin, and then we can translate. 用中文问也可以。
English too, and someone can translate it for you.
Or you could type the question. You can type. I will. Let's move on to my next project.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have a lot of time.
Yeah. We can come back to that.
Yeah, I think we can come back to that later. And then if you have any question, just feel free to reach out to me.
Sure.
On social media. Okay. Share screen. Share body. Oh, hang on 1 second. 等一下哦。先把网站先打开。
Hazzeh.
Hazzeh is up here?
I sent her the link.
Oh. Yeah, she's here.
Yeah, so happy. Yeah, Hazzeh, I hope you are well. We were talking about the Palestinian situation, and Hong-Kai was sharing her project on Newark. So maybe Hong-Kai, you can continue, and maybe later on, if Hazzeh wants to join us for discussion, we might have the chance. But Hazzeh is with us, okay? I was Hong-Kai just shared with us about the project of Newark, and we were thinking about the Palestinian situation. But Hong-Kai, do you want to continue?
Yes. Just let me. Okay. Share sound. So Borom is a very recent project that I did in Jeju. So it was firstly commissioned by the Jeju on Jeju Island, and then when the Jeju Biennale was forced to be suspended due to the pandemic, this other art museum in Japan, in Maebashi, called Art Maebashi, that took it over and helped me to finish make this project. And it's part of the group exhibition on Less Resonant Worlds. I first visited Jeju in November 2019. And when on my very first day on Jeju, I was told by 3 Jejuans that allegedly when Jejuans speak, each sentence is very short. The wind on the island blows away most of the words. So I think it was from here that I learned what a powerful force the winds on Jeju Island can be. And to the point of that is not only a very, very powerful natural phenomenon, but also a very influential political and social force island. So this was another very difficult project, to say at the least, because when I started to do research for the project, that coincided with the outbreak of the pandemic. So I did most of this project with very intense collaboration with my colleagues on Jeju Island and my colleagues in Tokyo, Japan. So back to the winds on Jeju. How could I say it? I want to make a project about Jeju, but also about the everyday life on Jeju. And then so the very first question I'm confronted is, how do I make a project about everyday life or the form of everyday life on Jeju when I don't live in Jeju, when I don't speak Korean, and when I barely spend any time on the island. So having come across this very strong, powerful on Jeju, I got very, very interested in the winds on Jeju, because the wind is something that every person on Jeju live with on every basis. So I started to think, would it be possible to make a project about the wind in Jeju, about the wind in Jeju, and also about how the people live with the wind on Jeju. And then it was at that point I was introduced to a Jejuan poet, Kim Si-jong, Jin Shi-jong. You can say this is his autobiography published in Japanese. He is a Jejuan poet who is now 91 years old and who has been living in Japan since 1950. And why this Kim Si-jong is very, very important for the project, because I think, the reason I am very drawn to Kim Si-jong's work is that his positionality, that he is Jejuan, and he put Jeju in the middle of the Jeju massacre, and and ever since he was forced to live as an exile in Japan, and he's been writing in Japanese rather than in Korean for many, many complicated reasons. So I see him as someone who live and work and exists on the border, on many, many things. And I think this is part of the reason why I'm particularly drawn to him, because that is also a kind of positionality that I strongly identify with myself. So Kim Si-jong, he was involved in the Jeju incident or Jeju massacre as a militant activist. He was part of the South Korean Workers' Party, so as an armed militant in the uprising, in order to flee the persecution of the government backed by the U.S. government. Again, that is very, very familiar, especially after we have touched upon, this, the history of Palestine. So this Jeju incident, Jeju massacre, although initiated by the South Korean government, but it was secretly aided by the U.S. government. So Kim Si-jong was involved in the uprising, and then in order to flee the persecution, his families arranged a secret boat for him to escape. So he took on a fugitive journey from Jeju to Japan in 1950 over the course of 6 days. And some of you might be very familiar with the history of Jeju incidents. The Jeju incident didn't really come to light in public until almost 20 years ago. So in light of that, Kim Si-jong couldn't really talk about his involvement in the uprising until nearly 20 years ago. So written and spoken very extensively about his experience in the uprising. So when I approached him and asked if he would be interested in doing an interview with me, especially in regard to his experience with the wind during his fugitive journey from Jeju to Japan. And I was so excited that he was. And so we did a three-way Skype interview thing in March last year, assisted by a Taiwanese scholar living in Japan. So it was an interview of me asking questions in Chinese and the Taiwanese scholar translated into Japan. So it was a challenging interview between me and Kim Si-jong. And so what out of it was a transcript of our conversation of Kim Si-jong reflecting his experience in a fugitive on the land and on the water, and over the course of 6 days in relation to the wind. And so I developed 6 strands of encounters with the wind based on the conversation of Kim Si-jong. So this 6 strand of encounter between wind and other subjects. This encounter in the form of a representation of subject are in 6 acts of a repertoire. And the act 1 is called Winds. My editor, who is a Jejuan and who works as a sound engineer and a sound designer, we have a lot of discussion with him as my research assistant, who is Korean, living in Tokyo. So we wanted to collect sound of winds from locations pertinent to Kim Si-jong's fugitive journey. So we have discussed and come to decide on 20 locations. So I'm going to show you several of these, some of this location. First is Keowre Forest, and this is the forest where out a lot of Jejuan villager and the militants had hit themselves. And this is Puchong Port. Puchong Port is one of the villages on Jeju Island that had the most bloody massacre. Like I think almost the entire, I think 90% of the villagers were killed in Puchong Port. So that's how it's called the April 6th slaughter ground. And this is lava strata, and this cliff is why is it included in this? Because Kim Si-jong, when he was on a boat leaving Jeju, he very clearly remembered that he saw the hill of the Suwabong Mountains. And this one is Guanta Island. That's a very, very tiny island offshore Jeju. And Kim Si-jong, he was hiding on this small island for 4 days and 3 nights. Let's listen to some recordings. Let's hear the Puchong Port. And maybe the sound of the Guanta Island. Kim Si-jong was on this island for a long time. So this is the installation view in the museum. There are 20 recordings, and the museum came up with a really good way of displaying the sound. So they came up with 20 codes. So you could just point your smartphone's camera to the QR code, and you'll be able to listen to the sounds on your smartphone. And the act 2 is Bosa. So this would be the encounter between wind and the geological archive of the Jeju Island. And why I say why is Bosa rocks is I would consider it to be a geological archive of the wind, because the Bosa rock is a dark color, fine grained igneous rock formed from a rapid cooling of lava. It contains holes left by gas bubbles. And you can see that from the distribution of the Bosa rock on the map, almost the majority of the lands of Jeju Island are constituted by Bosa rocks. And because Jeju Island it itself is a volcanic island, so you could say the whole island is a geological archive of this very like porous, because of the wind, they are all contained in the rock themselves. And you can see this really big map that includes the Kim-si-jung fugitive route from Jeju to Japan, the wind's movement between Jeju and Japan, the ocean currents between Jeju and Japan, and the recording location in Jeju for Act 1. And that is how it's installed in the museum. And I think for me, why I think I consider this map to be some asynchronous map that is constituted by multiple time and multiple modes of like temporalities. So there is time that will be Kim-si-jung's escape journey. There will be geological time, the whole formation of the Jeju Island over a million of years. That also includes the time of the water and the wind around the Jeju Island, between the Jeju Island and Japan, that is still ongoing in our contemporary times. And this is the Act 3 postcard in Wada is a Yemenese restaurant in Jeju City. When I was visiting Jeju City in November 2019, I came across a Yemenese restaurant run by a Korean activist and a Yemenese refugee chef. And it was on the wall. I saw this postcard pinned on the wall with the Arabic text written on it. And since I don't understand Arabic, so I took a photo of the postcard. I sent it to one of my Palestinian friends, collaborator, Jordan, the collaborator of the Hazzeh project. And this is translation. I'm a Palestinian refugee in town. Maybe that is why I understand the difficulties you might be facing as a foreigner here. I hope the war would end in Yemen and that it will become a prosperous country that is welcoming to refugees from all over the world. I also hope all countries open their doors to refugees and that wars end all over the world from Shadi. And so you're curious why I include this postcard in this project, since it on the surface doesn't really have anything to do with Kim Jong. But I do think that also pushed forward by the desire and by the necessity survival and the right to live. And so I think it's very, very similar. It's not that dissimilar as the drive, the reason for Kim Si-jung's fugitive journey from Jeju to Japan. It's all for the desire and for the right to live and to survive. So I'm going to share a little bit the audio clip recited by Khaled Oded, who is not Shadi, but who is a diaspora Palestinian living in Jordan.
أنا لاجئ فلسطيني في اليمن. ربما لذلك أشعر بمدى الصعوبة التي قد تواجهونها في اللجوء. أرجو أن تنتهي الحرب في اليمن وتصبح بلداً ناجحة ومرحبة باللاجئين من جميع أنحاء العالم. أتمنى أيضاً أن تفتح أبوابها للاجئين وأن تنتهي الحروب في كل مكان. شادي. لا بد من صنعاء وإن طال السفر. نتمنى لكم النجاح في مشروعكم الرائع.
So you can see the installation view of like a one mono speaker and a photo of that postcard. And the F4 is Yongdong Haman, meaning the goddess of wind. So what you see in the photo is farewell ritual to Yongdong Haman by shaman Oh Yongbu on Guangqi Beach on Jeju Island. So Jeju Island, according to local mythologies, there are approximately 30,000 gods on the island. And Yongdong Haman, the wind, is one of the deities who only stay for 1 month every month on the island. So when the Yongdong Haman is in the whole month, over the course of the month, the whole island will be mobilized and to host all kinds of ritual, festivity, and a ceremony, in celebrating her return to the island. And so this farewell ritual was conducted on the last day when she was on the way out. And I see this Yongdong Haman ritual as a way of wishing the goodness, the well-being of the islander, as well as those who have to leave island, and for those who are forced to be exiled and to settle in Jeju Island. This is Yongdong Haman's audio documentation. I'm going to play just a couple of minutes. I think you can hear the background ambience of a villager, chat and laughing together, because I believe, according to my collaborator, I know my sound engineer in Jeju, that he said all of these rituals are very, very communal. That is something villager that will come together and do it together. So the blessing. So they may offer deities, and in return, the deity will give blessing. And so for those of you who are familiar of the Jeju, it's very much it's quite similar to Okinawa. That is an island that where the protest, the political and the social resistance of the everyday life. And why do I think this will have anything to do with the resistance? Because I do think that in order to keep on fighting and to resist, and how I think I'm more in this project, I'm much more concerned with what is it that keep us going? Meaning the faith in deity, the way, the form of togetherness, so that we don't feel alone, and maybe even some, the pleasure that is necessary for the resistance, for the work, for the labor, and for the survival to be possible. So here, speaking of pleasure, this is Act 5 songs. It's a playlist provided by the Hope School member from Yemen in South Korea. Hope School was located in Jeju Island with an aim to build a supportive community between island residents and newly arrived Yemenis who seek asylum in South Korea. And some of you might know that Jeju Island is a self-governing province since the break of the civil war in Yemen. The Jeju Island, they opened the border to Yemenis asylum seeker, which explain why there's like a sizable community of Yemeni asylum seeker and a refugee on Jeju Island. And the local community organizer, they founded this Hope School to give assistance to the newly arrived newly Yemenis arrivants with legal, social, like service and social consultant, consultant, etc., etc. So I was connected to this woman, a Hope School member, who has since then already applied a refugee status and has relocated to Seoul and is now living in Seoul. And so I asked her if she wouldn't mind, she'll be interested in collaborating, and then in a sense of providing listening, like a playlist, the kind of playlist music that she would like to listen whenever she wants to relax, or when she misses home, and when like a leisurely time with her friends and colleagues, etc. So in turn, she sent me this playlist of 16 songs. And now we come to the sixth act, My Dear Clementine, Morning Dew, My Heart, with vocal appearance by Kim Si-jong, Hwang Yong-hyun, Shaman Seo-sun-shi, and Jong Sin-ji. In the conversation with Kim Si-jong, I asked him if he is fond of any specific Jeju, like Korean or Jeju related folk song. And he brought up these 3 songs. On a vast wide open seashore, the morning dew in my heart. And on a vast wide open seashore is a song that his father taught him when he was a kid and when they were both at the seaport looking over to the water. And morning dews in my heart are a very specific song, very important song during the democratic movement of Korea in the 80s and in the 90s. So even up to today, despite Kim Si-jong's being long settling in, that he still remember and would sing these 2 songs. So I'm gonna play a little of the audio documentation. First of all, Kim Si-jong singing.
넓고 넓은 바닷가엔 오막살이 집 한 채 고기 잡는 아버지 젊어르는 딸이네 내 사랑아 내 사랑아 나의 사랑 클레멘티 늙은 애비 혼자 두고 영영아 갔느냐.
And this is the other 2 songs. Oh, this is the complement of 2 songs. My heart. So that you can see, you can read the lyrics here. And that is the installation view of the 2 channel of the shaman's ritual, and the 4 channel of Kim Si-jong's voice, the piano performed by a Jeju, a local performer, and also by the local poet Hwang Gun-hyo, She is a poet in her 80s who has experienced the massacre when she was a kid. And she now exclusively writes poetry in Jeju dialect. And she also responded the same set of questions that I asked him. And Shaman Xiu Sun-Xiu is one of the most powerful women shaman on Jeju. And when we approached her and I asked if she wouldn't mind being recorded, and so instead of giving a shamanistic ritual, she asked us to send a message to Kim Si-jong in thanking him for sharing the pains of the island for so many years. So this is there's a booklet that go with the work. Okay, I'm going to give you can see the link. I type it in the chat window. From this link, you can hear all the audio files of the project, and then you can even download the PDF of that small booklet, where the entire interview with Kim Si-jong is included. So
let's discuss.
So let's discuss. This project is, I think, to distinguish this project from the Hazzeh project is, I didn't really spend much physical time on Jeju Island. So this project was done mostly in collaboration with my Jejuan collaborators.
Okay.
Yeah.
So questions from the floor. Let's think. Why did Hong-Kai make this art performance or installation or in the sounds of this at different places, and also the sound of the music those people heard when they were young during this massacre period. Maybe we can discuss. I went to Jeju Island and watched their biennial.
The first one, right?
Yeah, right. It's all this images, right, of those massacre, uprising, and so on. So apparently, you did not present anything directly related to the tragic scene,
right?
The resistance, the bloody images. You present in a very, very indirect way, right? The sound. So can anyone explain why Hong-Kai did that? Let's hear that before Hong-Kai explain to us why she did it. Can we think? Can you try to explain why Hong-Kai did that? What's the relation? What's the connectivity between the shaman ritual, the sound of the wind, the harbor or in the woods, and on the island, and the sound of this popular music? Fine. Song or our Korean friend, does that make sense to you? Young-hyun? Yeah, try to say what you think first. Unmute yourself before you speak. Just a second. Try it again. The sound. Yeah. No. No.
现在也没有
有。
啊
Very loud.
哦，有。
，sorry。
Okay,
好
that's okay. Yeah.
啊，谢谢。我今天的演讲对我来说真的印象比较深刻了。刚开始的
It's
时候
very impressive. Maybe I can interpret for you, or yeah, right. Jinsong said the talk you gave today was very, very impressive to him. Yeah, go ahead.
第一次那个 Palestine 的话，然后对 Palestine 人来说，这个是有一种痛苦，很的有一种那个歌。我听到那个歌的时候，想到韩国阿里郎这个歌。韩国在殖民时期还有一部，很多我们的那个老人都一直透过那个唱那个歌，然后克服当代他们面对的事情。还有，
So when Jinsong heard this song of the Noah, he was reminded from the Palestinian experience. He was reminded of the Korean song of Ali Lang. Is it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The old people love to sing this song to ease up their painful experience during this Japanese colonial period. Right. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
我最近看过有一个纪录片，它那个纪录片是在 Okinawa 里面的，有一个日本奶奶分享以前在那边的日本军慰安妇的背后的那个时候姐姐们的故事。然后他最后还记得阿里郎的歌，然后他那时候唱用很发音也很准。唱阿里郎的歌的时候，我那时候对我来说印象太深刻了。然后
So Jinsong watched a documentary recently concerning the couple women in Okinawa Island. There was an old lady, Japanese old lady, mentioning the experience of those couple women. Also, she recited a song that was Ali Lang, and she used Korean to sing the song. That was a huge impact on Jinsong himself, right?
那时候日本奶奶说，那姐姐们，朝鲜人姐姐们唱那个阿里郎的歌，然后她唱的阿里郎的都很完美的，所以那时候我对这个歌的力量、歌的 power 是真的很厉害的。然后刚刚听到那个努瓦河的时候，我也想学习努瓦河这的部分，好像刚刚看起来没有那么难，然后好像对，所以我们好像对。
Yeah. Okay. So he said that the Japanese old lady said that in the time back then, those Korean young women, they sing Ali Lang the song happily. Is it happily, cheerfully?
这个很难说明那感情是什么样的。
Yeah, okay. It's difficult to explain how they felt when they sing the song, but this Japanese old lady could recite the song. Apparently, that the message is very vivid and clear. And so that people made him think that the power of song, that when he heard this Noah, he also had the same strong feeling, and he wanted to practice it, sing it. Yes.
所以刚刚老师也说那个王洪开老师那个透过这些艺术想要说的内容是什么？然后对我来说，我们也是一起学习努阿，然后一起唱那个努阿和，然后记忆现在从很久以前到现在的那个 Palestine 人面对这些的情况。这样的话，我们比较容易跟大家都忘记的那一系列的历史跟现在的情况，我们都一起认同他们都有一种
So Jensen was saying that if we all learn this song Noah and try to practice it, so that we could re-experience what we felt during that time of mourning and of loss by the Palestinian people, right?
然后最后说那个济州岛的那个济州 Island， 然后这个真的印象真的很深刻了，选了凤还有永登海芒的故事，然后金世忠的故事，然后透过他的经验，现在在济州岛里面的 Yemen people 的那个面对的情况，其实在济州岛的 Yemen people 承认难民的比例是那个0.4%而已，很低，所以反正今天两个故事两个作品对我来说都连接到韩国的历史跟我自己的有一个比较有相关的经验，希望我这个的作品一起享受我们各个人的那个各国家也有这种应该有这种每个历史里面有面对这个一样的差不多的情况，所以对，今天真的很感谢那个演讲官。
Yeah, he said he wanted to express his appreciation and thanks for Hong-Kai because both stories, both incidents gave him a very strong impact, especially the second one, the Jeju Island. Nowadays, only 0.04, right?
0.4%.
0.4% of the population who recognize or acknowledge the Jeju Island incidents. Other people just deny it or doesn't want to recognize it. So to think or to rethink or to re-experience that historical moment is very important for people to understand what and how people went through those moments. But Zhensong, could you explain why Hong-Kai used such an indirect way? The sound of the wind, not the sound of the screaming or shouting, soldiers or the victims, not the images of those massacre events, right? But very remotely related, the sound experience, the waves, the wind, or the music. Those are not sad music, right? Those are the music those young people at that time, they listen in their daily life, maybe before the massacre, before they knew that they will come to this tragic event or to come to this uprising. And also the remote correspondence of this postcard that expressed the wartime in Yemen. Right? How do you put them together?
我觉得对我王洪凯老师的那个艺术是一种 narrative 的艺术，从前面到后面的东西都那个读者也是需要有一种准备，想一起对话的这读，帮他一起慢慢走一步一步的话，好像我们进入到那个王洪凯老师的一种 narrative 里面。刚刚听到济州那个故事的时候，先介绍济州岛里面的环境，然后那边跟济州岛的人怎么表现他们的日常生活，跟济州岛的人跟什么一起生活呢？然后有风，然后从济州岛里面的从岛的生化下来的那个故事连接到那边，然后那边的那个金熙中的讲金熙中的故事，然后金熙中那个济州13的那个 massacre 那个的关联的那个地方，然后他坐boat然后去日本去日本的时候展示站在那边逃避休息的那个有一种道德，然后那边的声音，好像我看到在学校，我慢慢到他那时候面对的那个想象。不知道老师的意图是什么。所以我透过的这个的角度来，然后我慢慢最后好像面对，好像透过这个的艺术，然后王洪凯老师想要说的内容是什么，然后我也从那个之后，我也跟我们这个世界里面知道的我们的记忆，我们看不到的被隐蔽的人的民众的声音。
Okay, so Zhengsheng was saying that, but because you know Jeju Island, right? So I also want to hear other people's reaction. For example, Jonathan, okay, or Catherine, or Wen Chong, or Sidi Wei, or and so on. Young Hyun, you can say something too. But saying that listening to all the surrounding sound of this island, it could seem to experience those people who heard the sound of the music before or after or during that incident, right? So that for him, that is clear and vivid, real. But people try to explain how you interpret the gap Hong-Kai prepared for us.
然后我最后想要老师最后想要说，刚刚济州岛介绍的时候，那个老师介绍的这3首歌都有很有意义的。Clementine 是对，这个是比较情感上面印象中的很深刻的歌。然后내 마음 My Heart 这个是1944年发表的，有一种诗跟歌一起合起来的。然后那时候的那个殖民时期的时候面对的那个的民众的那个状态的那个表现的部分。然后阿契米斯也是民主化运动的时候的那个老师已经讲了。对，所以这个的歌也有这样里面的故事。然后中间对。
Okay, so Zhengsheng was once again emphasizing the relatedness of the songs to the historical moment of the democratization, right? It's related to that historical background. Yeah. So let's hear other people's feedback. Anyone wants to say something? Jonathan? Jonathan. Yeah, unmute yourself. Yeah, just some you're feeling. Why the Hong-Kai record all the sound of wind? Do you think when people deal with this 1965 event, they can just record the sound of the wind or the sound of the songs or that historical moment to send a message? What is the message? No, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Everyone can speak. Okay, I'm just picking up the ones that on the screen.
Yeah, I don't really have opinion on that, but when Jinsol saying that when the song on Palestine, Noah, how to spell it?
Noah.
Noah. So
N-O-W-A, right? Noah, yes.
Noah, yeah. So I think it's the project of memories, or it means that a lot of people to forget this kind of memories because it reminds them of the painful thing in the past. And Jinsol also saying that this kind of project also reminds him of Arirang in Korea, and it also to think of censorship in the 1965 in Indonesia, because a lot of popular folk songs in Indonesia being banned, and people who sing this kind of song being affiliated with the communist group, and it become and how to say a subject, or how to say, if you popular, if you are singing this song, you are a communist, you deserve to be killed. Yeah, and I think maybe in the last few years, a lot of people try to bring back this song as a popular folk songs, and they try to popularize it, saying that it's not taboo, it's just song. It doesn't have any relation with the communist or any ideology. It's just people's song. So we cannot be killed or we cannot be oppressed because singing this kind of, yeah. It makes me like when Hong-Kai brought this project from Jeju and from Amman, Jordan. It makes me to think that what has been considered taboo, what kind of sound considered taboo back in Indonesia. Yeah.
There are cases of a Taiwanese song during the Japanese period banned afterwards. Okay, people suspect that they have implications, and so that happened everywhere. Other comments, feedback? Yeah, Justina. Yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So I think my opinion might resonate a lot with Cairo. I'm gonna call you out because we have to be studying about haptic, but all in all is that I think my general impression of 大家听得到吗？
可以
clear. The general impression that I got from this sharing is that that listening is a radical thing. Like sure. the keyword that comes across my mind when I hear how you situate yourself is that because it's that Okay. It's like I try to imagine how it would be like for me to feel your work in these, because it's definitely very different, and that it's like, imagine like people without any kind of background knowledge to Jeju or Palestine. It's what would it be for them? And I think for like, I mean, for a practitioner, an artist, or even for an audience, it's like learning how to train your senses. It's as a counter, it's a counter move, because like I wouldn't deal with like folk songs, because I'm from Hong Kong. Like we don't have melodies that sound like that, but that doesn't mean that I cannot associate with them. But it's interesting is that like another thing is that the second project with Jeju is very much with a landscape and environment, and it dawns on me how nature or an actual environment can store memories. But then I think a lot about when I want to, like when I try to make art, how do I present something without extra gaze? I'm not sure how I'm but that's but I think it's more than just about, you're creating a different kind of narrative. It's more about, I like to believe all these negative memories, all these negative emotions, they can be transformational, but then we don't know it. And then through like recording, because I see how a lot of like exhibitions or artists, they like to record something or do a documentary, and then you have tons of photographs, a lot of visuals to look at. And I think with sound, it's very interesting. I think a lot, there's so much room to play with sound. But all in all, I think the important impression that I got is that sound, that we can learn how to be a better ally, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think Justina mentioned some very interesting keywords. One is that, of course, a radical position, right? But this position is something counter, as you say, negative. But I always say it is a counter creativity that can be constructed by the listener, okay, as opposed to the sound production. Because this is actually literally not direct denotation by any language, right? The sound of the wind, or the sound of the sea wave, tides, or the music. There's linguistically or denotatively, they do not point to the event, but the listener should or could counter create something. How do we do it? Catherine Elizabeth, to tell us how to do it. Yeah, unmute yourself. Yes.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say the question of how we do it is definitely one that has to be faced all the time and constantly, and as a part of, I mean, I think as Hong-Kai Laosi was saying, that's the responsibility of artistic practice is to always ask that question and always. I've been kind of trying to piece together my thoughts into like a coherent form of expression, maybe kind of like Justina, but I was particularly the Palestine project. I was I was very struck by the whole project, very moved. I was thinking about is, which I guess kind of relates to audience as well, is how the whole project involves these elements of a very personal experience with performers and the act of moving through the spaces and announcing oneself in a space that is a very personal sonic and sensory action. And I was sort of thinking, then the other part that I was thinking about is how recording also becomes a very, for me, I always find recording a very sensitive and political and complicated act. How to, and there's, you know, plenty of background in terms of like I'm not so much talking about that side of the conversation that becomes a bit too technical in terms of what technology should be used or the way that people approach recording that way, but also like I was really interested in when Hong-Kai Laoshi talked about in some cases maintaining a distance and not asking for the specifics of a sensory experience or not pushing, and how recording itself kind of sits at that juncture of how you engage with this sound or this act that you're recording. And I think that question was kind of something I was thinking about in the first part of the presentation. And I've been trying to think of, because I feel like I understand more of the recording, the Laoshi's active or practice of recording now that I've heard the second part of the presentation. But at the same time, I was thinking about that a lot, and I wonder if it's maybe a little bit different between the two projects.
It's very different. It's very different. Noah is directly associated with the experience of mourning, right? So we can say that that's clear. Okay. Even though it's of course a process of evolution and change, but Noah, even the tone itself, we feel the sadness, but the wind, the sound of these popular songs, and the shaman's ritual, or the sound that Jingshi I have heard on the island, there's no sadness, there's no violence, there's no tragic moment, there's no danger. So we have the feeling. So how did it come? Fanny, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Professor Joyce just mentioned why Hong-Kai professor didn't use the sound of screaming or something others. I remember before a group of orchestra, 交响乐团, they have used the instrument to make the very screaming that to remember the Fukushima nuclear disaster, the people screaming. Yes, but when I hear the music, it was very shock that you don't know how to respond to it. You just shock. But I think Hong-Kai professor used that kind of music. It creates a space that us to engage, but not just shock and just standing in the audience position, and we don't know how to react. Yes, but I also have a question that I saw Professor Hong-Kai use the visual media to help us understand the context. So how do you balance the sound and the visual parts, these two texts, and when you're recording the sound, it has a local context, and you are creating a local context. But when you are putting it into a museum or letting other people hear it, the context is changing. And I want to know that you balance this kind of gap between the different contexts here. Yes, so this is my question. Thank you.
Answer for you. I love it. Li Qi, do you want to answer for Hong-Kai? No, I think this is his responsibility to really make sense and understand and appreciate the artist's work. So
and sometimes the audience, they have the best and more articulate responses than the artists.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they might have different approach. Li Qi, go ahead. No, your sound.听不到。No, the sound input might have been or output. I think. Anyone who wants to joining or just raise your hand. We still have Fiona and Ying-Hyun and right, Wen-Tong and John and other people, whoever, Monica, Patrick, anyone who wants to share your thoughts, please join us. Okay, and Hao, yeah, right.
修好是我朋友。
修好 yeah, please, okay, please share with us your thoughts. 李琦可以了吗？
好像还是不行。
哦，可以了。
OK。
No, 那是红海说，不好意思。
No, 那是刚刚是李琦的声音。你又把声音关掉啊，李琦。哦，可以。
哎，可以。
又不行啊。
没有。I'll call on you later. Fiona, Hyun-Hyun, Yong-Hyun, want to share with us your thoughts? Okay, go ahead. Fiona first. No, that's very strange. No. 可以了。
What about now? Can everybody? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I
guess I have some feedback about like my experience going through the two projects. At the same time, one question for Hong-Kai. So I because I'm not before this sharing. I guess I've never been to Palestine nor Korea, and I cannot say that I'm very familiar with both countries' history that was touched upon by these two works. But at the same time, when I was listening to the recordings, I feel I was brought back as if I was like traveling or moving along with the the performer, or for example, being see when listening to the recording of for the Jeju's projects. And one thing I noticed about myself when going through this experience is that I don't think for me it's just the experience more than just audio or sonic. Like, it's not just about listening, but I also there was this kind of multi-sensory, almost like a travel or journey when going through the recording. It's at the same time audio but also visual, but at the same time it's almost like feel the sea winds like blowing onto to my skin. And I know it's like by no means the same with like what, for example, Jin Jung-shi was experiencing at that time. But then I think it's through sound, it kind of connects experience. For example, being a Taiwanese living on an island surrounded by the sea, with maybe in a very interesting way connects with Kim Jun-shi's experience when traveling on a boat trip away from Jeju. So I wonder whether it's as I want to refer back to the title of the day, haptic geography, that whether this haptic means more than just audio or like one type of sound, but it's also like creating this multi-sensorial experience among the audience, of the audience, and then connected with the different peoples in the entire of Hong-Kai work. And but I also wonder that because Hong-Kai, when you research on these works, and then when you say enter the field, you were sort of an outsider or semi outsider. And because of my experience of being an outsider, feeling all this multi-sensorial experience, I kept wondering, if your position being a semi outsider, trying to find ways to artistic way to kind of create this intertemporally experience, whether your position as a semi-outsider matters, like allows you to create this kind of a space of imagery, space and time. Yeah, that's my question.
Good, very good. Hong-Kai, you can respond.
Okay.
At the end or now?
I can do it now because we're already 5. I think we're running out of time.
Right. Yeah.
I will answer. I will respond to the question very quickly. First, to Fanny, how do I balance the audio and the visual? I mean, for me, there's no formula when it comes to balancing, and I'm not how do I say that? I think listening, just like as Fiona pointed out, listening needs other multi-sensorial experience in order to come into existence. I think it would make more sense. So I think when it needs the visual, you need a visual to provide context of the space, the history of the people, of the materiality. Then yes, then it's necessary. And so for me, I think I'm always feel a little bit ambivalent when it comes to showing this type of work, or you could say this type of practice in the museum context. I think I always consider my work truly exist outside the museum. So when you see, what you come across in the museum, I think it's fair to say they are for documentation. So I think as an artistic practice, it's a matter of how I organize those documentation in a museum or like a gallery space. And also to respond to the haptic geography, I think I mentioned it earlier in the presentation. I think as an outsider, a stranger, I think especially without to this very particular knowledge and history and memory. So the question that I constantly ask myself is that, okay, so how do I touch the history? How can I create a way to touch the history, that knowledge, that memory? So I the way of touching or the mode of creating the access to be able to touch is a very central concern in my thinking and also in my way of working and collaborating wherever I go. So it's not like, so I think each project has a very specific like span of time, and I think for me to really live, I think it will be impossible, and I fully acknowledge that limitation. So I think the haptic geography, for me, it means mostly like how I can touch upon that surface of my collaborators' experience, history, and the moment of history. And then to respond to the last question, as an outsider, as a stranger, what is an advantage? Is there an advantage for being in this positionality? And yes, there is, because I think as an outsider, as a stranger, therefore I have no local. I'm not affiliated with anything, with a particular faction or clique, or so therefore in some instances, I'm allowed more freedom to speak. But I'm not speaking for myself. I think to speak, to speak and to help create space, or you could say interface, for those voices being disavowed to be able to emerge. So I think for me, when I develop project, I'm not exploring, I'm not creating, I'm not doing anything new. I think I think for what I can do the best is to finding the space for those existing, for those disavowed, for this, for those removed moment of history, memory, and history to be able to emerge. Yes.
I think we still can allow some comments and questions. Okay. We won't continue till 6 o'clock, but maybe no. 10 more minutes or 15. Let's just see whether there are other thoughts and people would like to share. Are there any other?
I think Yong-Hun, yeah.
Yong-Hyun, yeah.
Yong-Hyun, I think she wanted to ask.
Sure.
Yeah.
Your sound. No. You're unmuted, but I think that's something to do with your earphone or recording. sound.
Hello.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Actually, luckily, Fiona asked everything what I want to ask to her. So,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Fiona.
So no other questions?
But yeah, yes.
Okay. Other people, other comments? Chi, can you speak now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I want to ask a question, but because there are some technical problems on my earphone. So, as Hong-Kai said, those songs are really wonderful because, for me, I also think it's a very important historical archives because you travel to another place and encounter with the local or even the foreigners of that place and record their sound. And it also reminds me of your previous work in Huwei, the sugar factory. Yeah, so you hold a workshop and let people cooperate to sing a song or practice something. But actually, I want to ask because for the public, although your this historical archive is very important, but they are quite limited in the museum or the art museum. So, what do you think of the make this historical sound or archives to open source for others? So, are you allowed other people to use your work or work on recording this sound as a source to develop their own project? Because I think this is a way that the historical moment can be continued to many other different projects. What do you think of this idea to make your own project as an open source to the public? That's my question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, a couple months ago, a Palestinian Jordanian filmmaker and asked if she could use the audio files of my work for her own films. And I say yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think I have no problem for the other to be using the documentation of the project. It's a very simple, simple
yeah,
answer.
right. Direct answer.
Yeah.
Van Zhuang, Wen Tuang, any comment or question? Unmute. Have you seen that unmute?
刘老师，你也可以 unmute 他。
对，我一直在按，我按不掉。
哦，是吗？
不行。John or Stevie, do you have any comment you want to share? Stevie 有没有？修豪 do you want to say something?
If not, I will do. Can I make a sneak preview of my upcoming project?
Okay. Before you your forthcoming project?
Yeah, my
Right?
upcoming
Yeah.
project.
No. All right, well, go ahead. But because I also have something I want to comment project just now. But how you showed up, you want to share some of your thoughts on Hong-Kai's work? No?
I will speak with Xiuhao later tonight. So
Okay. You settle that with among yourself.
Yes.
But
maybe
I'll say something. Maybe you can respond to mine or comments, and then you give your preview of your upcoming project. But I just think the two projects that you presented today is very different, as I just said. Okay, the first one we could say it is a historical archive of that sonic experience. Okay, Noah is clearly, apparently, the song or music associated with that moments of loss, moments of mourning, and also the experience people went through. Okay, so that would bring back and those particular modes of experience. But I'm very struck, and maybe I should say I'm very intrigued by the way you presented this Jeju incident through the recording, because as I said previously, those are not direct historical archival, right? The sound of the sound of the waves, the tides, they are the same today. The sound back then, maybe 40, 50 years ago, right? During this incident. So I was saying, I just said that the gap you left us, okay, this is the sound that surrounds those people, those young people, the old people, before the uprising, during the uprising, after the uprising, okay, when they were in prison, or when they were killed, or when they were encountering this the threat and danger. They heard the same wind, they heard the same tide. So nature doesn't change, right? Those people know the passage of time, and they are also you recorded this surrounding of sound, the space, as people say, a sensorial space. But those are the space that did not really connote or denote the tragedy, right? But people went through that. So you were bringing us to this. Of course, that supposition is there together with your interview with Jin Zhizhong, okay, and that the intended site, so that we kept, we were asked to build up the gap. Those kids or the young people or the old people here, sound of wind, and did they know the dangers coming, or how do they think back their families whom they lost when they hear the same sound? So that those are the feeling, that is the pending revelation of what really happened, because you didn't right through the sound of wind and so on. So, but we were placed in that situation of ignorance, but we hear all the sound. The moment is coming, or the moment is gone. And so that's very remarkable. So that was my reading, but is that yours? Of course, I don't know. You can comment.
appreciate all of these feedbacks. I think if I were to add anything, I think in this project there's not only the act of listen.
Yeah.
Been listened by including deity, rocks, forest, beach, water, and wind. So I think what I'm very concerned, what its project is concerned is this intersubjectivities. And I think this intersubjectivities it can be very, very radical, just like what Justina was saying, that can help us to become a better ally.
Yeah.
And then I will do a very, very quick sneak preview of my upcoming project.
Okay.
Very quick. And then everybody, because it's been a long presentation. Okay. Okay. It's called Fuego. It will be shown at Kaohsiung Museum of Fine Art, Kaohsiung. Very quick. You will listen to the land. A distant sound comes, faint and carried by the air. Rings in my ear. It's a quote in a book that was written by the indigenous Canadian Dylan Robinson in 2020. So I'm just going to read a very short description of this project. In James Baldwin's Giovanni's room, he muses, perhaps home is not a place, but simply an irrevocable condition. In this spirit, the project Fuego was developed in collaboration with the family of indigenous Taiwanese composer Yong E Yatao Yung Dana. In this case, Fuego, which stands for mountain in the Zhou language, not only refers to mountain lands, his home in Keowre, Ali Mountain, Ali Shan, but also to a geography, a condition, a consciousness, a psychic world, a perspective, unspeakable borderland. 吴用就是高一生，中文来讲 ，taking 吴用 musical trajectory as a point of departure, Fuego seeks to navigate music, is entangled with land, migration, exile, incarceration, trauma, truth, and belonging at the intersection of colonial settler nation state, lived experience, and indigeneity. As listeners, we are decidedly separated in different listening contexts and positions, as well as in the power relation therein. As such, we ought to ask, is it possible to enter the space of Tamayazoi, meaning listening in Zhou language, constituted by the multiple of listening, knowing, and yielding? 聆听、认识、听从、服从. In considering this inquiry, we attempt to ground our body ears in Zhou's Fuego and to tirelessly question who is singing, who is listening, who is being listened to, and what does it mean to listen to Uyong's music. Between the knowable and the unknowable, the listenable and unlistenable, and in Zhou's Fuego of dreams, spirits, languages, forest, river, deity, star, and beings, as well as in violence and its possible irreconcilability, under which sonic, the geographies, a physical system, sensate, structure, and energy are we conditioned to listen. I'm gonna let you browse through just real quick without explaining. That's it. Sorry.
Well, that wouldn't hurt.
Wouldn't hurt, but I would invite you to come to the opening in Kaohsiung Museum of Art. Right now, due to the pandemic, I think the museum is still trying to figure out when exactly. Yeah. But I will let Joyce know.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. It's very mind-blowing, and also the discussion is great. The input from every one of you is great. Okay, yeah. Of course, we have to thank Hong-Kai for giving the opportunity to think and to work out our own thoughts about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everybody. It's really, really wonderful to be here today.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.